I'm gonna get fucking murdered for this one. Series 5 is overrated.
Search your feelings, you know it to be true.
Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends was a popular kids show that aired for just under 40 years. It's based on a collection of books called the Railway series, which is surprisingly good. The series follows a group of talking train people who live on the island of Sodor, a fictional island located off the coast of England. I'll make a training video for those of you who still don't get it.
Blah 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 blah.
Thomas has a pretty large fandom of mostly children, but a fair few adults, and pretty much all of them have one thing in common. They think the classic series is great. This is series 1 through 5. Sometimes 6 and 7 count, but most agree they're the black sheep. Like I said in my Tupi and Binu video, series 1 through 4 are honestly good. I'll never argue they're highbrow TV or anything, but they managed to convey a mostly consistent narrative with decent plots, world building, and some pretty good characters. Thomas, and a good majority of the cast, subtly develop from impatient, reckless children into much more grounded adults. There was a consequence to every action. Each time something was established, it wasn't forgotten. Once an episode said that Percy went to work on Thomas's branch line, that became the main place we saw him. This internal consistency remained mostly, for lack of a better word, consistent. Contractually, Britt Allcroft and David Mitton, the show's producer and director respectively, as well as essentially the combined showrunners, had to primarily adapt written material from the books. This continually proved difficult. They smartly decided in Series 1 to rid of the simple Railway series branding and retitle it around a central protagonist, and that just so happened to be the most popular character from the books. Series 1 got lucky in that most of the early books featured Thomas in some form or another, but as time went on and the story got bigger and bigger, he got pushed to the side more and more. Come Series 2, they basically ran out of Thomas stuff, and that's really bad because you need him for marketing. So they got Christopher Awdry, the writer of the books at the time, to make another Thomas book. I find it really weird that they only adapted 3 of them and left one story out. Like, if this was such a big deal, why waste one of them? Even when they started plagiarizing magazines, I'm sorry, I meant to say writing original stories, they still had to focus mainly on the books. But tragically, the Reverend Awdry passed away after Series 4. Britt Allcroft bought the rights to the franchise shortly thereafter, and with no strings attached, they could do really whatever they wanted. And that's exactly what they did. Many claim Series 5 is the best in the franchise, and for years there, I was one of them, but getting older, getting more perspective, and revisiting Series 5 has brought me to the conclusion that a lot of people either missed or ignored its many problems. As always, I'm gonna be approaching this show with my usual objective metrics. I do not want to hear crap like, Thomas is just a kid show, you're expecting too much of it. Like, if I do, I will take out your kneecaps. I feel like the Thomas fandom won't give me any trouble with that and are okay to treat this the same as any other piece of art, but I felt it was worth stating. And if you still disagree with me at the end, I tried. Where to start? Oh, I know! What the fuck is the deal with Cranky Bugs? I didn't really expect the very first episode to shit the bed, but yeah, we hit the ground running, guys! This is one of the few episodes I never saw as a kid. I knew it existed, I saw footage from it and the DVD cover, but I never owned Cranky Bugs. The closest I got was catching the ending on this really fucking cool DVD extra. Oh my god, this was awesome. I eventually saw it and loved it, and never would I have ever thought I'd say this, but Cranky Bugs is kinda dookie. The plot, characters, and world building are all severely damaged in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. It makes no sense the whole way through. The episode opens up with Thomas and Percy working at the docks. Pause. I already have issues. See, I could picture either Thomas or Percy being sent to another line to help out, but, you know, both of them? Do you remember the first section when I said they work on the same line? They both do some pretty important stuff there, and I highly doubt Toby and Daisy could pull that much weight. And considering what we learn about Toby this season, I don't think he's on the branch at all, so it's really just Daisy. And look, Daisy, I love you, we all love you, but you can't handle this. I know Mavis also exists, but she has her work cut out for her in the quarry, so I'd argue she's a non-factor. Farquhar is one of the busiest parts of the railway, and it would especially be now given that Thomas is a celebrity. He went to fucking London. His line isn't just an important route, it's a tourist attraction. It really seems like you're unnecessarily nerfing the branch, Topham. Oh, actually, it gets even worse. So Thomas and Percy come down here. Fine. Well, not fine, but, you know, whatever. But then the story decides that Gordon, Henry, Duck, and James do too.
What?
It is insane in its own right that all 4 of these guys just happen to be here the same night as a horrible storm, and that their shed is close enough to a wooden dock for the boat to hit them. That's wild shit. I heard the defense that they came down here because of the storm, but I still don't buy that. You mean to tell me that 4 engines, you know, one of whom works on the other side of the island, so do with that what you will, all happened to be close enough to Brendam Docks that it was the safest place to go. That's wildly lucky, especially because Gordon and Henry have night trains. I guess they just didn't tonight. I don't know, maybe they were cancelled? Why not just stay at a station like Wellsworth? It has a good shed. Even if they're down here because the docks are so busy that the express can just take a back seat, I still don't buy that. It's simply not safe for them to come down.
Thomas's branch line is important, and so is Edward's. But their track and bridges are not so strong as those on the main line. The Fat Controller does not allow the heavier mainline engines like Gordon to run on them.
That's why Thomas and Edward run the branch lines. They're small enough that the tracks support their weight. It isn't physically safe for Gordon and Henry to be here. The only time the big engines did was when Gordon came down by mistake in wrong road. That was an extremely close call, and they had to be very delicate with him so as not to break everything. That's why they parked him at the docks overnight instead of driving him back up. Actually, there was one other time in Percy Takes the Plunge when Henry came down. That was also bad, so don't try to use that as a counter. I'm of the belief that long-running stories should improve over time. Oh gee, if only Topham had other engines who could help out, you know, maybe ones that are actually, oh gosh, on the branch line. Where's Boko? Does Edward have a bowel infection or something? Why is he not here? Where is he for the whole season, actually? He barely does anything. Wasn't he a main character? Shit, why couldn't Bill and Ben do it? They're close. Or did the China Clay Company not want Topham borrowing them for some reason? As dumb as it is, this does aid the idea that the docks are booming. That's why they brought Cranky the Crane down, and presumably why he's so upset on his first day. He takes his anger out on Thomas and Percy when they snap back at him. He tries to trick Topham into thinking that Thomas and Percy intentionally caused a bunch of accidents. A couple holes in this plan. It operates entirely on the belief that drivers and operators just aren't a factor. The first 4 seasons, while having a few hiccups here and there, very firmly established that engines can't move on their own. They need drivers to pull the levers and firemen to light the fires. The engines can control the mood of travel, like shaking or banging, and they can whistle, but not much else. Thomas Comes to Breakfast is all about Thomas becoming cocky after his driver told him,
"You could almost manage it without me."
The point of the episode was that it was pure hubris. An engine can't move by sheer willpower, and Thomas found that out the hard way. Cranky Bugs pretends like Thomas and Percy were at all at fault, and like, no, it would have been their drivers moving for them. Why Topham never talked to them and blamed the guys who had no autonomy is beyond me. Based on what? The testimony of one crane? Were there no other witnesses? Like, Cranky's operator? Okay, so does Cranky have an operator or not? I'm more inclined to believe that he doesn't, but that fucks with, a lot. His plan fully depends on him causing havoc. It would be really inconvenient if, say, some worker who didn't want to lose his job decided not to listen to Cranky and do things the right way. And even stranger if Topham decided not to get his side of the story. You know what? Shit, I will do you one better. In the climax, Cranky and the other engines are at the docks. Then, a boat comes out of nowhere and smashes into their shed. And, of course, Cranky teleported right next to the shed, so he's taken down too. Not only do I not believe Cranky's perfectly functional after that, if he had an operator moving his crane arm, he's dead. That fall and that height would destroy the vast majority of your bones, and that is the least that would happen. And if he didn't die, since Cranky does still move, holy contrivance, Batman! This man looked at plot armor and said, yeah, I'm gonna need 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Either that, or they cleaned his guts off, got a new guy in, and Percy killed him too.
Pa, said Percy. He's back to bugging us. Don't move. You're still attached to Cranky.
But it was too late.
I'd argue that's, wildly out of character for pretty much everyone involved. Everyone seems a bit, too comfortable for that. That shit would weigh heavily on Percy for several seasons. This man takes shit to heart. The guilt would destroy him. And I kind of don't believe he'd ever unconsciously back up, knowing there was an innocent man inside. Series 5 actually has this problem a lot where something will happen that should murder a person or a bunch of people, and the show tries to hand-wave it and pretend they're fine. See, they didn't suffocate, the boiler protected them! Series 1 to 4 had this a little bit, but, case by case, people weren't getting thrown out of a fucking car before.
Rotten roads, he muttered.
You can't patch up a wound that bad.
It started a trend that prevailed throughout the rest of the series, and it got worse and worse each time. Why does the works even exist anymore? You can just get thrown off the tracks and all you need is a crane and some words of encouragement and you're fine. So, for all sorts of logistical reasons, Cranky can't have an operator. Topham should have found Cranky out super fast, and we're way too lenient with the laws of physics and/or characterization. So, he doesn't. And that's way worse! Remember when I said that machines can't move on their own? That's a consistent thing throughout most of Series 1 to 4. Everyone, doesn't matter if you're a train or not, still operates like a normal vehicle. But, now we've introduced a character who can just do whatever he wants. Why does Cranky work at all if he doesn't want to?
And no crane has ever complained before. Well, I'm complaining now.
Just like the invincibility, this is a long-running problem that mostly finds its roots back to Series 5. But even just looking at the show when it aired, I'd argue that this is a huge issue. Cranky doesn't fit with the mythology, logistically or thematically. This is no longer the realistic world it tried to be. I thought that was the point of Thomas. The one difference was that the engines were alive. Even though these locomotives can't move on their own and they seem outdated, they still have a lot left to prove. If they have autonomy, why do they have to prove anything? Just leave. If Cranky doesn't have an operator, he doesn't fit. Plain and simple. They either should have made this episode differently, or cut it all together and scrapped Cranky. Frankly, it's not that big of a loss. Most people generally do agree that the Series 5 characters are just nothing burgers, but I don't think Cranky's the exception that they do. The small development he gets in this episode is very quickly undone in the very next episode.
But ever since that stormy night, he never calls them bugs or mites, because he knows they may bite back. You are, after all, only little. We've got too much work, huffed Percy. Then perhaps a lorry should do your job. Percy was shocked.
The actual real development he gets is in later seasons, and credit where credit is due, what they later do with him is excellent. The show began a consistent story arc where he lets his guard down and allows himself to be vulnerable. Deep down, below all that gruff, he loves his friends and wants to stay with them. But all that nuance isn't present this season. What they do give him is lacking, and I don't think it's enough to justify his existence. And yeah, the rest of the new characters don't even get that! At best, they get an episode before being forgotten forever. Remember when each new character played a part in furthering the themes and plot of the overall series in important ways? Diesel, Daisy, and Boko all portray an evolution in the views of dieselization and the engines themselves, and get several episodes as room to breathe. One of the new characters this season is just Duke's model with Smudger's face. That's so lame, oh my god. They're not all bad like Cranky, but they're so bland. What do we know about old Slow Coach? She's happy when she has a home, and she's not happy when she doesn't. Cinema. And all the new characters are just like this, where they basically only exist for the plot and then dip into the fucking void. I think after this season, Cranky and the Nazis are the only new characters who actually properly come back. Honestly, I don't blame the writers. If I got to write a Thomas episode, I'd much rather write for an actually interesting character than the guy whose only trait is shitting himself. Imagine being a kid and getting a Derek toy, only to find out that he never does anything in the real show. He doesn't have a character arc or a cool crash, there's nothing that makes him special. If characterizing these guys is too much, maybe don't introduce this many of them and focus on developing as many as you actually can. Frankly, I'd rather 2 or 3 new characters who actually get character development. What a waste, and this becomes oh so common down the line. It all started here. The classic series was always good at tying together its one-off stories into a cohesive whole. But starting with Series 5, long-running storylines and arcs were abandoned. Continuity as a whole is still a thing.
If you can't push trucks properly, Henry, why not talk to a tree instead? You know how much you like the forest.
But that mostly pertains to stuff outside of the season or character things. In episodes 1 and 2, the dock's traffic gets so bad that they have to send 6 engines down to help out, and they buy a fleet of 3 lorries. That seems a bit low.
Your job's done now. These lorries are taking over.
That line actually makes sense since they're at the docks to take over duties, so Percy and the other engines can go back to their regular work. Or, I mean, it would, but then 2 of them go up to Thomas's branch line? One of them is just, like, vibing at the flour mill. Oh my god, all 3 of them left. We see later that one of them went to the Little Western. And then they all fucking die. I mean, yeah, I get the theme that you can't replace Thomas and his friends, especially if you're a bitch the whole time, so rather work with them than compete with them. But this is so fucking random!
Oh, and yes, I would 100% argue that it was a massive contrivance that all 3 of these dumb pieces of shit just happened to get into accidents on the same fucking day.
And then after Horrid Lorries, they just forget about the trouble at the docks. Topham seemed to not financially struggle from this, and refocuses his efforts toward restoring 2 different branch lines. With the harbor in Series 2, Percy didn't just die and they'd never address the harbor issues again. There were consequences. He stayed on the branch line working the goods traffic. Whatever main plot there could have been here was wasted in 2 episodes. Okay, What about Kirk Ronan? Nah, that's worse. It's rushed in one! A good one? Yeah, but it takes what could have easily been a season-long story arc about rebuilding a piece of Sodor's history and condenses it down to one? Why? Especially because Kirk Ronan is actually from the books. There's so much potential to mine from this place. So much rich history and story concepts, and yet the one thing we do with it is make it the new terminus? Huh? Half of the trains now start and stop here. I'd argue that's already odd for Gordon and James, but again, why do Thomas and Percy just abandon the branch line to come, how many hours away from theirs? Here's a map, guys. Here's Thomas's branch line. Here's Kirk Ronan. What the fuck, bro? It seems like picking Kirk Ronan as a terminus over Tidmouth and Knapford is really stupid, considering how far it is from where Thomas and Percy should be. I'm not really sure why they did that. Knapford doesn't even appear in the entire season. But to be fair, it is a pretty set though, so there's that, at least, I guess. I mean, I don't mind Kirk Ronan too much. It's mostly fine, just really weird geographically and logistically. See, I'm more annoyed at Toby's branch line. If I'm being honest, the original Toby episode kinda looks like shit. The story is about how Topham and Toby met for the first time, but that's silly considering how many northwestern locations Toby travels on. He passes the damn windmill on Thomas's branch line, and yet I'm supposed to believe Topham had never heard of Toby. They didn't even have to build East Anglia from the books, just make the sets visually distinct enough so we don't confuse them. And if they couldn't, maybe save Toby for Series 2. But the show told us Topham and Toby had never met, so for future stories, I'd expect them to stay true to the writing rather than the visuals. There really wasn't a need to revisit this part of the timeline anyways, but, nah. Series 5 tells us his branch line has always been on Sodor and connected to the Northwestern, and that Topham's reopening it. Again, could have sworn Topham didn't know about Toby till they met, so them having a connection via rail and canonizing that he did in fact travel on Thomas's branch line is... I don't believe you. You could have just ignored this little error, but no, we're moving Toby back to his old branch line. They don't even naturally progress to it. One episode, Toby's just on his branch line, and we're meant to not question it. And there's this moment in Thomas and the Rumors where they accidentally say Percy has a branch line of his own.
Percy stopped by a signal on his branch line near a field where sheep were grazing.
Which, in good faith, I took to mean he was just on the harbor line at Knapford, so I could see the counter that all the times they say Toby is on his line, it's them meaning Thomas's, kind of in the area by the quarry. But no, cause he's back at his own sheds, the exact same location as Series 1.
All right then, Alsdale End, said Percy. That's my home, replied Toby.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure... The clapping probably didn't come through very well. I should probably do that again without... So, I'm pretty sure this is the timeline. Toby's line was connected to both Farquhar and the coastal run, somehow, and he worked on the north side of the island. Also, somehow, he and Topham didn't cross paths until the end. Toby's line shut down, Topham needed a tram engine and bought Toby. Years later, through a massive contrivance, Oliver just happens to go down this abandoned line and crashes into Toby's shed. Topham decides to restore it, putting Percy and Toby on the task. Then Toby moves back there, and Percy fetches goods for him. I think... I seriously can't tell if the Oliver one is meant to be a different line, since this is episode 16, and Toby and the Flood, an episode where Toby's on his line, is episode 11. It's kind of just an Edward situation where they spontaneously decided one day he just had a branch line with no build-up. if you're gonna commit to this, by all means, show me the reconstruction. A big chunk of the themes this season anyways are about fixing what's old and making it new again. It is not enough to just say he has it again and they fixed it off screen. I want to know what Toby feels about being back home. I want to know how Percy feels about losing his best friend on the branch line. What about the tram engine issues at the quarry? Has Mavis taken those duties over? Is she mature enough now? I'm not saying she's not, but I need to know this. It's even weirder because in the same season they established that the Farquhar quarry is so busy that they'll bring Stepney down to help out. I'm not sure how they got him up here when it's illegal to have engines with uncovered wheels on this road. Like, that's why Toby's here, I thought. But then again, Series 3 got this wrong, so I guess inconsistencies are fine if it happens in the good seasons too. They are not. Actually, wait, can we talk about this episode? Because holy shit! Stepney helps out, then, on his way home, gets switched down the wrong line. Ah, shit. How unlucky. Dude then comes across a giant scrapyard and gets kidnapped by 2 evil diesel engines.
Got ya this time, Stanley.
They nearly kill him too, but you know, luckily, Topham just happened to be in the neighborhood. I really love the tone. But what is this ass plot, gang? Random shit just happens to make us think Stepney might die. And what the fuck is the deal with this place? Is this line a part of Topham's railway? I somehow doubt that this specific railway controller would have set this up and employed these 2 diesels. I also doubt any engineers would willingly destroy a steam engine without the proper red tape. The diesels pushing him in doesn't work, nor does the crane starting up. We are shown in this episode that machines can't move on their own. That's why Stepney can't just run away. Topham teleporting doesn't work. Like, even if he does own the place, Topham Hatt has so many factories and stations under his care, I highly doubt the timing would line up this perfectly. Unless this was here in Tidmouth or Knapford, I don't buy he'd be able to come all this way that quickly. And I actually still don't believe that for a number of reasons. Even that trek would be quick, and wow, the whole show kinda changes if you tell me Topham owns a concentration camp right by Knapford Station. And you're telling me Stepney's driver didn't realize they were going the wrong way for that long? Let's bring my map back. Knapford is here, and the Bluebell is over here, close to the Skarloey. What is this plot? Why is it so broken? Yeah, on the whole, Series 5 has minimal to bad plot and world building, which is really a shame. One of my biggest praises of the first 4 seasons is that they took one-off episodes and weaved them into a continuous narrative that always felt natural. And this only got worse and worse and worse and oh my god, why the fuck is there an ice cream factory on Thomas's branch line? Why is there a platform for— why is there actually a platform for it? Is this supposed to be like a station of some kind? Oh my— no! These kinds of problems, they all find their roots back to Series 5. So we're stuck with individual episodes. To Series 5's credit, some of them are pretty good. I already mentioned A Better View for Gordon offhandedly, and yeah, Gordon has mechanical failures, and these issues eventually lead him into crashing through the station wall. This, coupled with his pompous attitude and narcissism, bring him literally crashing down. It's the tried and true Karma theme. And there are a lot of other cute and good ones, but you know, a lot of them are also pretty shit. And personally, I feel that it would be remiss of me not to go over Gordon and the Gremlin. You know, this is the one episode fans agree is really dumb in Series 5. Now, I think Cranky Bugs and at least one other episode I haven't gotten to, you know, kind of mog it in that regard, but yeah, this episode is super weird. The dialogue is clunky, there's no real attempt at character work, and it doesn't really have a central thesis. So I'm fucking locked in, let's go! Gordon can't steam one day. His driver quips that there's gremlins about.
What are gremlins? Asked Percy. I've heard they're little green men who play tricks, replied Thomas.
I don't think the timelines quite match on that reference. I think the film came out later than this episode takes place, which is what Thomas is clearly referencing here. What the driver actually meant was the old slang term. When there were problems with machines, the operators would jokingly blame the mythical gremlins.
Gremlins. You gotta watch out for the foreigners because they plant gremlins in their machinery. That's the same gremlins brought down our planes in the big one.
Big one.
That's right.
Pa, said James. Gremlins don't exist. They're just an excuse when things go wrong and no one knows why.
Yeah, James, that's right. You didn't have to tell them that.
If Firelighter says there are gremlins, there are, insisted Thomas.
Whoa, I guess he did? I know Thomas isn't Sherlock Holmes, but I'm pretty sure the 40 or 50-year-old engines would have heard this before. This is kind of like that moment in Magic Railroad where Thomas says he doesn't know what eventually means.
I don't know what eventually means, but it sounds very, very long.
Fuck me, this guy isn't stupid. That's one of my praises of this fucking season, come on! And actually, this is probably a minor thing, but in a world where steam engines and other vehicles are alive, why would this specific slang even exist? You know, just blame them.
Silence, he said.
Bro, what is your beef? They're just chatting! Remember when Topham raising his voice and losing his temper was incredibly rare, which helped emphasize the bad behavior of the engines? I don't think he needed to do that here. They're all mostly getting along. There's like a minor disagreement. Topham then tells them he has a VIP on the way, and Percy tells them about the gremlins. Then Topham says, "Nah, bitch, they ain't real. Get off your lazy bum, Gordon, and do your job." Okay, yeah, he phrased it differently, but the sentiment was the same. I do kind of think this is silly on Topham's part. Gordon didn't say he did. It was the driver. Yell at his ass if you really need to.
This is already off the rails.
There's an inconvenient problem with the turntable that we'll skip past. Line converging at Kirk Ronan is bullshit. 3 characters who should be busy elsewhere are conveniently in the same place at once. Far away from where they work, too. The bath is cute, I'll give it that. Did I mention the VIP has a dog?
Off.
Well, Gordon lets off steam and scares it. It then fucking books it and then runs into a ginormous bull with ginormous balls. No, like really, someone actually made that by hand for a kid's show. Fucking freak. And runs back into the station into Thomas's cab. Oh, but it's okay, the VIP was getting on board Thomas's train anyways. So obviously they're going to hold onto the dog until the VIP is able to retrieve it, right? Oh, sorry, of course they have a schedule to stick to, I forgot. So instead they take off the fucking train with the dog inside. You know, yeah, sure, this logic is beyond my years. No, really, I don't want to skim over this. What the fuck? Not only are trains loud and noisy, which could frighten the dog, but this is clearly just a safety violation. Steam engines' cabs are really hot. They're powered by fucking fire. They've got a lot of moving parts too, so you're lucky the dog doesn't just get hit with one of those. Oh, but you see, it's okay, because the dog is out of the way, standing on the cab door of a moving train. We're not gonna fix the problem, we're just gonna make a new one, because what the fuck happens if he falls out of the moving train? Then they name it Gremlin, and it turns out the VIP was Topham's mom. Both Dowager and Cranky have a very similar issue where they are great characters, but only because the later canon fleshed them out really well. I don't really care about this twist because we didn't get to know her. Whatever mystery they were trying to build up doesn't work because we never got to figure any of the clues out. We diluted that with the bullshit Gremlins plot. And yeah, I'm in agreement with the general consensus. If the dog had jumped into Gordon's cab, the story would have been quite a bit better. And wait, how the shit didn't the dog have a name until now? She didn't adopt him on the island. Percy pointed him out to us when she got off of Thomas's train. And Thomas collected her at the docks, which I'm assuming are the ones at Kirk Ronan. Dowager is a really weird person. What a lame episode. Oh my god, nothing happened. Nothing really clever or cute. This is such a nothing burger episode. What is this? As for that other episode I mentioned earlier, well, that's a story for another time. This is really going to be a hot take. Rusty and the Boulder is probably the most widely acclaimed episode in the series. Most people praise the themes, but need I remind you that form reinforces content. And the logistics of this story don't make any sense, gang! Topham wants to build a new quarry to mine stone, and Rusty isn't comfortable with this because of a big boulder that dangerously sits atop a mountainside on the line.
I think it's watching me.
Oh, Rusty, you're so silly. Who would ever think of that? Then, Edward the Blue Engine brings up the actual GOAT Thumper! And since the workers don't know what gravity is, remind you of someone, they use him to drill into the mountain and, to no one's surprise, Boulder gets loose. I'm a bit surprised that Wind and Rain hasn't already pushed this boulder off the very small perch he's atop, but oh, the episode actually has an answer to that. Okay, let's see what that is.
It's rolling along our line.
Boulder chose to move. Nothing pushed the boulder. Boulder doesn't stop rolling. Boulder is alive. Okay, I get the nature clapping back theme, that's all fine and good, but there is a sentient boulder choosing to terrorize the railway! You know, with that, I have several questions. I thought the point of the show was that the only real difference between our world and Thomas's was that the machines were alive. So buses, boats, trucks, tractors, and trains, they're all fair game. And, whatever my boy Thumper is too. Can't forget about him, I fucking love this guy, he's my fucking mate. But now we know that boulders can be sentient too. So what's the limit, gang? I can machine gun questions for this. Why is this the only sentient boulder we meet? Why aren't other rocks alive? Why are rocks alive at all? Is there a rock god? In fact, now I'm curious why the engines are alive. Why do rocks have full autonomy when other characters don't? Are they puppeteered by a god? Is Mother Nature real? Is she a guy? Why does nobody ever talk about this again? Nobody knew boulders were alive before that. This should shake everyone's worldviews. Thomas and Rusty should not be as cavalier in the next episode. Well, Thomas shouldn't be either way, considering he nearly lost one of his best friends. I thought we had an entire season of development where Thomas and Percy learned to genuinely love each other. I guess that can go fuck itself then. And wait, that's actually another point. Boulder is very clearly an intelligent creature considering he intentionally left the engines alive. Boulder was doing this to send a message.
We should have left this part of the island alone.
That's why Rusty, Skarloey, Rheneas, and Percy didn't get crushed. He didn't want to destroy them yet. He wanted to make a show to put the fear of God into Topham. And if he didn't, boy, these guys got a little bit too lucky! What's the limit on Boulder's intelligence? You know, does he have a conscience? How can a rock form intelligent thought? How can a rock form intelligent thought? I'm becoming fucking Elmo! How can a rock form intelligent thought? These simple slice-of-life stories can't continue the same anymore. The world has been changed. We've recontextualized a lot of the narrative by introducing the supernatural element. Magic doesn't fit the mythology of Thomas and Friends, not this continuity anyways. The trains operate on a mostly realistic railway, working jobs that engines really do. All the parallels, all the themes, they tie back into this one core principle, and the magic rock fucks with that so hard. Now, there is a way to do supernatural in Thomas, and I'd argue Duncan Gets Spooked does it really well. The supernatural is shown, but never confirmed to be real. It's up to interpretation. Did the ghost engine try to communicate with Duncan, or did Duncan just see things? It's not too on the nose, it's just a nice, subtle ribbon. But to be this overt and bombastic is fucking insane. The fandom recognizes this when it comes to Lady, and I think it's hypocritical to claim this episode is amazing and shit on Brit's decision there. If you think one is bad, why don't you think the other is too?
What absolutely ruins this movie, and the entire Thomas franchise as a whole moving forward, was, in my opinion, the magic element. This shouldn't be a shock to anyone who's seen my videos before. I've talked about in the past why I think this is. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends is a series that is totally timeless and is held in such a high regard by its fans because of how realistic it once was. This is why kids are drawn to it.
It is definitely not the most realistic episode of the series, but I appreciate the grander themes this episode taps into. It poses that great age-old question: how much should humans intervene with nature?
We're going together. I'll tell them what happened.
Stop using the fact that stories have themes as shield from criticism. The best Thomas episodes have both strong plots and great messages, and we should advocate for both. I honestly disagree with the reading that David Mitton understood Thomas better than Brit did. During production, David Mitton wrote an episode called Super Ed. The plot was that an electric engine gets struck by lightning and gains superpowers, before randomly being murdered by Gordon later on. It is one of the fucking funniest things I've ever heard, but it's also garbage. Britt Allcroft was the one to cross this out, saying, "Is this really realistic?" And I'm in agreement with her, but at the same time, how is the magic boulder really different? How is Lady, in fact? Was she really realistic? I've always thought that Britt and David's strength was adapting written material. They had a keen eye for whittling away the fat, and in most cases, I'd say they did a damn good job of putting page to screen. Even when those pages were fucking stolen, who said that? But the two of them were very creative people who, more often than not, let their imaginations take control without thinking. When we give way to giant boulders destroying buildings of their own free will, we give way to so much other dumb shit. 2 years later, Britt made her own steam engine god OC that she voiced, the most important engine ever, and an evil diesel with a fucking weapon attached to his roof. Who approved that? Oh, and magic gateway portals randomly around the two different universes. And Sodor actually exists in a pocket universe with magical conductors that protect it. With shit like this, we pave the way for Misty Island, which connects to Sodor with a tunnel that travels underwater. Yeah, cool, man. That's so cool, man. And all these other completely bullshit scenarios along with it. Magic Boulder was just the first. In other words, it all started with Series 5. I've talked a lot about Series 5 and its demons. It's many demons. But it does have a lot of great stuff going on too, and I don't want to just ignore that. On a pure production design level, I'd say Series 5 is the peak of the series. The show crew took all of their techniques from all the previous endeavors, tugs included, and locked the fuck in. The set design is really impressive. I can fully believe that Kirk Ronan used to be the island's central terminus. The way it overlooks the town is inspired, and the big station building itself is... mwah! The pyrotechnics are kind of insane. In a lot of cases, I agree Series 5 is a bit too loud for Thomas, but you can't deny that the production quality has never looked better. The color grading is sharp and dynamic. The engines themselves pop so well. They don't look like props on a set, they look like real engines, especially with those glossy coats and weathering details, the latter helping to sell the grimy industry theme they've been pushing all season. I love the way they pushed the focus on the dirty aspects of operating a railway. From the outside, it looks simple and idealistic, but on the inside, it's hot and bothersome. I can tell without dialogue that Thomas has worked hard because I can see that effort all over him. They also use a lot of basic concepts to affect tone, like pathetic fallacy, nighttime for spooky atmospheres, rain for somber ones, bright suns for happy or neutral settings, etc. It's simple but effective. The direction is great as always. Mitten has this thing, and most fans know about this, where he'd place the engines in front of the camera when the story personified them, and when it didn't, they'd be facing away, to make it look more like they were just another part of the operations. It makes the engines look more like steam engines. The shots are very appealing. These stories have never looked better. But undoubtedly, the best part of Series 5 is the strong character work for almost all the returning faces. Aside from the new characters, and arguably Gordon, the cast is the best it's ever been. The classic series somehow managed to pull off long-term character development really well, and that goes especially for our main character, Thomas. He started off as a cheeky little fucker who barely thought about the people around him. He acted before he thought, and frankly, I think that's putting thought too high. Over the years, he had to learn what it meant to care for others. And over years of being humbled, he's finally become an adult. Thomas cares deeply about the people around him, and deep down, all he wants is for everyone to be okay. An excellent example of his growth is his relationship with James. Thomas was the one to rescue James on his first day. They've always been on the same path together. James is just one step behind. They're both cocky pieces of shit that prove themselves through trial and tribulation, coming out the other side stronger and wiser. Thomas once again finds himself saving James, both literally and figuratively. Because of Thomas, James is able to better himself as a person, ending the season near as mature. For them to finally be on the same level at the end of the season is really satisfying. I kinda think the later seasons making them just two hot-headed idiots in a never-ending competitive rivalry removes what makes them so special as a pairing. It just doesn't work, and it undermines the growth that they achieved here. After Make Someone Happy, they just go back to arguing about dumb shit like keeping trucks clean or fireworks. It's not good. But of course, that is in no way the fault of Series 5, and their dynamic here is excellent. Remember that moment in Series 2 when Thomas said he doesn't care if his passengers died just to spite Henry? Compare that to Thomas and the Rumors, where he's more concerned with the children's playground than a dick-size contest between the engines and Harold. I think it's really important for a kid show to let the main character grow up with the audience. He's a nice role model in that regard. Again, it's a shame pretty much all of the writers after this forgot all about his character development, but, you know, whatever. Not Series 5's fault. Actually, staying on top of this, I really appreciate just how smart they made him. In Thomas, Percy, and Old Slow Coach... Gee, I wonder who this one's about. Thomas and Percy are caught in the middle of a fire at the workman's hut. The fire engines run out of water trying to control it, and they can't use seawater because it clogs the tanks. So, instead, Thomas, with no hesitation, volunteers he and Percy's water tanks. He made a very smart decision based on instinct and saved the day. There are a few moments in this season where he's very quick to react in intense situations. I really like this. It tracks with his unorthodox methodology. He has a different way of viewing the world. world. Where Gordon, Henry, and James spend most of their time pulling trains on the main line, Thomas has been down on ground level. He has street smarts, and the reaction time also tracks given his time pushing trains out of the station and navigating the yards. Yeah, remember when Thomas was smart? This is one of his best seasons of the whole show. I really love what they do with him here. The rest of the characters are pretty great too. While I wish some of them had a bit more to chew on, I'm happy that all of their base personalities are intact. Toby is still the fun-loving grandpa. I love that Topham primarily relies on him. His trust is consistent with past seasons. Whenever Topham needs a problem solved, Toby knows best. I like how much insane shit he's involved in. Like, if you were gonna take anyone on these roller coaster rides, why not have it be the guy who hardly gives a fuck? Toby being the one to watch the lorry fucking die is fucking perfect. Oh my god. You know, it's like that awesome detail in Tramway Engines where Toby was just watching Mavis fuck up across the field. He's the guy who tries to help once, and if they don't take his advice, he'll watch them burn the house down with a smile on his face. I love you, Toby. In fact, that's why he started liking Percy, and I'm so happy they kept their really sweet dynamic here. The show really did push Thomas and Percy together as a packaged deal, and their dynamic was great in these seasons, but Percy's best friend was always Toby. He appreciated the kindness Toby showed him on day one. Whenever Percy had a problem, he'd talk to Toby about it.
Cheer up, Percy. You'll soon know more about trucks than any other engine. That'll be exciting.
And apart from, like, one other episode, this is the last time we see them interact like this. It's really nice to, wait a minute. Percy's evolution is really inspired. From the little guy who looked at the world with rose-tinted glasses, Percy was hardened by the grimy world around him. He feels put upon.
I feel put upon, he complained to Thomas.
He's the worker, and he rarely gets a break. In turn, he's kind of an asshole a lot of the time. He's always been like this. Someone snaps at Percy, he'll have a go at them, but it's reached a boiling point here.
I'll never be rude again. However, you two mites are in my way, so move over. Pa, said Percy. He's back to bugging us. Don't move. You're still attached to Cranky.
But it was too late.
Percy was too tired to think properly. The docks, he murmured. Huh, sniffed Thomas. We can tell. Toby laughed. The docks are full of fish, not flowers. All right then, Alsdale End, said Percy. That's my home, replied Toby. That's why I like it, especially when you're there and not here saying I'm silly. Good night. George was rude again. Bumpy ride on rotten rails. I'm glad it's over. So am I, said Percy. Huh.
Series 5 gives Percy a really nice character arc, where the world pushes him down time and time again, and he has to find his hope again. It's really cute. Life's gonna throw its stones at him, but that's because he's the one on ground level, and you know what? Better him than anyone else. He knows how to deal with it. And he more than proves his stripes and dedication throughout the season. No matter how much the world tries to shove you down, you gotta find the strength to push through. He's pretty resourceful too, like with the canvas barrier. It was a life or death situation, and had he not acted quickly, he would have been killed. The character-driven episodes are consistently the best this season, and his episodes are basically all character-driven. This is the best Percy season, and sadly, the show would only get worse for him. They turned him into kind of a dumbass, and that's odd. He's never been the smartest guy, but he at least had a decent grasp on things. Again, canvas barrier. Or how about Toby and the Flood, or on a much smaller scale, the Good Luck package. This was one of the last good Percy seasons. It's such a shame they threw the good stuff away after this. Oh, Henry's a fucking asshole! I've always found Henry one of the most compelling main characters on the cast. He's got such a dynamic range and a great personality. Henry was born deformed, and it caused him to lash out at everyone around him. It's kind of like the Percy thing, but on a much more dramatic scale. The world pushed Henry down, and he was born thinking that the only way to get back at it was to strike before something goes wrong. That's why he hid in the tunnel. We do pull the layers back throughout the years to see that, deep down, Henry's a pretty gentle guy. But that edge is fully on display this year. And, I mean, that makes sense. He hauls massive goods trains. He doesn't get the prestige that Gordon does. No, he goes into the spooky forests with the asshole trucks bullying him the whole way. Henry messes up in his starring episodes this season because he wasn't able to see the bright side. He's not incapable of listening to reason, he just refused to. And it's not like he's always just an ass, or that it's even always without warrant. Yeah, Thomas was late as shit, and he messed his schedule up. He shouldn't have been so nasty, but it's understandable that he was upset. Or in The Trouble with Trees, when James mocks him after an accident. He's snappy at him, but like, yeah, of course he is. He just had an accident, and James is weaponizing Henry's passions against him to make him feel bad.
Why not talk to a tree instead? You know how much you like the forest.
I mean, Henry's fully in the right there. The later seasons, especially CGI, took this persona and forgot it was a thing. He's more and more of a coward with each passing season. I mean, Henry's not a pushover, nor is he a dumbass. In one of the Miller seasons, I could be fucked if I remember which, they're all the same, Henry uses Rocky to move Percy, a steam engine, off of the fucking tracks. He had no right to do this. He's only on the main line because he's coming to get the shit you're hiding on him!
Flatten my funnel! I thought there were rolls of wire here.
Health and safety, Percy.
That didn't follow what I said, Bert.
He's basically just a coworker with a temper. He's fairly competent, all things considered. Whatever mistakes he made before were the result of his aggression, and even that had limits. Like, he follows the law and basic railway codes. He learned that back in fucking episode 3. Nor is he a coward. He was scared in Haunted Henry because some freaky shit was traumatizing him. His initial reaction was to think it was bullshit, and he learned that was right. His actual fault here was being so pissed off at Edward, which the story punished him for. I don't know why, but they kinda just treated Henry as a little wimp post-Series 5, and that's when they bothered doing anything with him to begin with. Most of the time, he was just set dressing, and all that culminated in them writing him out of the main cast last minute. They literally wanted him gone. They stopped caring about Henry after Series 5. Oh, hang on guys, I get it now. Oh my gosh, Toad is my baby. Toad was such a nothing burger before, but for whatever reason, they gave him this really fun episode where he becomes a runaway train. And like, it's not perfect, and I could point out a few contrivances in it, but it's fairly cute, all things considered. A brake van character wanting to lead a train for once is so meta when you consider this is the first time one of them led an episode. I love how Oliver and Toad comfort each other when they need reassurance too. They went on the run together. If there was anyone they trusted in, it would be each other. Even the other, less focused on secondary characters aren't poorly characterized. While a lot of them don't get a ton of development, they're still in character. Skarloey telling George to get fucked perfectly follows up his stint on the railway in Series 4. He tried pairing Sir Handel with him to make Sir Handel see that he was exactly like him, because George was an asshole, and so was he. But that failed, and they got worse than ever. Everyone can be helped, some people just won't accept it. And George fucking around and finding out naturally follows on the last story too, fitting the themes of redemption by proposing George find it himself. It is a shame that Magic Railroad didn't follow up his character arc as planned. It's frankly one of the few dangling threads from Series 5, and I'm surprised they never ever resolved it. But it's great here, so whatever, I won't knock Series 5 for that. The show would sadly ditch many of these guys later on, and by the end of the show, whatever return they had was pretty easily forgotten again. In other words, you get the bit now, right? Series 5's problems stuck around, and its best features were fizzled out. Even the damn color grading. It's vibrant and pretty this season, and in the next it's all ugly and gray. The characters got a lot of bright spots later on, sure. Like, there are certain bits in even the hit era I'll defend, but there's more that contradict what we know, and there's just so much nothing. If I had to hazard a guess why the good stuff faded out, it was probably because of the various transitions. They changed the aspect ratio and rushed production right after the film, so lighting and color grading took a back seat. And then they brought on a writing team that didn't understand the prior seasons, barely doing their homework. That's why so much stuff contradicts the previous seasons from here on. They just pumped out as much stuff as they could to keep the brand going, and guys, that's what Series 5 was. Brett Allcroft wanted to promote the movie and showcase how cinematic the brand could be. That's why crazy shit like dams on branch lines collapsing, a giant sentient boulder fucking shit up, and giant avalanches happened. They wanted to show off the spectacle, unlike the last few seasons which were made out of true passion for the source material and characters. Series 1 was made because Britt fell in love with the books and their story, and I can see that passion ooze out of almost every place that season. But the longer the show went on, it didn't care about that. So while Series 5 had a lot of great stuff, it was ultimately the start of the decay. Corporatization began back here as they treated Series 5 as this hot commodity to fill a market and pull investors in, rather than art. And that shows with how contrived the events are to fit their wish of spectacle. The mistakes kept going, and I ultimately blame this for why on a meta level. Series 5 is a hot mess. On the one hand, we've got a giant magic sentient boulder terrorizing the railway. The plot is non-existent and works to create several holes. And many of the individual episodes are a mess of contrivances. The saving grace? Beautiful production quality, direction, and character work. I fully believe if you took Christopher Audrey's world building and Series 5's character work, you'd probably have elite Thomas content. So, ultimately, I give Series 5 of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends a 5 out of 10. I am constantly torn on whether it deserves even that, so that is subject to change, but that's where I'm at right now with it. To be clear, if you still like it, that's perfectly fine. In fact, I do too. I'm just tired of people claiming it was the peak of the show when many of the show's greatest issues began here. If you criticize this, then you should criticize this too. If you still disagree with me though, let me know down below, assuming YouTube isn't an asshole and blocks my comments despite the disclaimers and the cussing fuck rah. And if you liked my coverage of Series 5, maybe check out some of my other videos. Subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and pledge your soul to the eternal Gopher gods. And, you know, if this does well, who knows? Maybe I'll cover some more Thomas stuff in the future. Or maybe I'll do it anyway. I'm independent. I don't need validation. Bye-bye!
Aber